Welcome to the Security Weekly News wrap-up for the week of 1 November. So it's already November, if you can believe that. A billion Bitcoin mystery solved. Russian bears doxed. Oracle, Zoom snooping, and drugs. So stick around.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Do you know where your organization's crown jewel data is, whose data it is, what it contains, and if it's flagged, tagged, and classified accurately? Defense in Depth requires discovery in depth. At Big ID, they help organizations uncover dark data, classify sensitive and regulated data, meet compliance requirements, and take action for data on-prem, in the cloud, and everywhere in between. Learn more about how Discovery in Depth can change the way enterprise organizations find, classify, and protect sensitive data at securityweekly.com/Big ID. Increased attacks, skill gaps, talent shortages, expanding attack surfaces. Cybersecurity and IT teams face these real issues every day. CyberA for Teams is the #1 NIST-aligned DoD 8140 and 8570 compliance certification and skills training platform. CyberA for Teams makes managing teams easier, guarantees measurable training outcomes, and keeps your team's skills sharp to meet today's biggest security threats. And did you know 96% of the Fortune 500 have employees training on CyberA? CyberA for Teams. Now you know. Visit cyberA.it/solved to solve your team training challenges.
Hello, I'm Doug White, and this is the Security Weekly News wrap-up show. Let's wrap up all the show topics for the week. On Application Security Weekly number 128, Mike, Matt, and John had as their guest Alfred Chung, the Senior Product Manager at Signal Sciences. Alfred was on to talk about adapting legacy apps in Azure and how you may deal with that so you don't have so many security gaps as you onboard those things. And we all have legacy apps. It's some people have lots of legacy apps. Some people have really, really extreme legacy apps. I mean, I've certainly seen that at school. So definitely an interesting topic as people start trying to. I've been asked repeatedly about how to move this to the cloud or move that to the cloud. So definitely something coming. It's definitely something you need to be on top of. On Business Security Weekly number 194, Paul, Jason, and Matt had on Marie Kettner, the Director of Product at Cybrary. Marie was on to talk about how to develop your cyber skills to address use cases of skill development, onboarding, industry certs, and career paths. So a lot of really nice stuff that people have a lot of questions. I get a lot of questions about that stuff as well. We get asked all the time about, how do you develop your career? I see tons and tons of questions on Quora and all these other kind of places from people that are interested in this industry. So definitely something worth checking out. In the second segment, they talked about different certs, communications, and they always talk about a whole pile of stuff on there. But they also talked about the dark side of authentic leadership. So I was kind of, yeah. On Enterprise Security Weekly number 205, Matt and Paul had Mike Gruen, the VP of Engineering and CISO at Cybrary, on to talk about offsite training and how inefficient it is. The main focus that they were talking about, of course, was on-demand training, which is what pretty much everybody started switching to. I used to do offsite for Intense School and ISFCE, and it was definitely expensive and time-consuming. And when you have to fly people somewhere or send them to another location, and so definitely the online this on-demand stuff is the way everybody has gone. It's a really good topic for your training needs. On the second segment, they had Kevin O'Brien, the CEO and co-founder of Greathorn, and this is a great segment. And he was talking about a massive cyber attack. I'll spoil it and say it was about a massive phishing cyber attack that was going on. They kind of teased it a little bit. They were comparing it to the Proud Boys phishing campaign. It was a really good segment, and this campaign is quite interesting to hear about. If you were watching Security Weekly last night, you heard Paul mention this particular segment several times. It's definitely worth going to check out if you haven't already watched it. And in the final segment, they had Mike Campbell, the VP of Global Security Programs at Extra Hop, who was talking about sort of the long slog of remote work that IT teams have had to do, and how, as this keeps going on and on, the need for remote visibility of the networks is so critical. And I mean, I will reiterate that the several places that I work have all had to go through this, especially with the cyber side of things, and just try how do we securely and effectively let people work from home and be able to dig into things that are really critical without sacrificing our organization's, perimeter. On Security Weekly News number 79, the amazing Jason Wood returned. He'd had a couple of weeks off, but he came back to talk about Emotet, which was fun. And he was very nice that he didn't steal my maze story. I really liked the maze story a lot, and if you should go check that out, because I was really enjoying the maze. People saying we're going to stop operations, which I'll believe it when I see it, and how they spent all this time talking about what humanitarians they are for helping expose all these security flaws, and and making you pay ransoms for all this time. So it's quite interesting. On Security and Compliance Weekly number 50. Jeff, John, Josh, and Scott had Frank McCreary, the co-founder and CTO at Aptable, on, and he was talking about cloud computing hybrid models and how this is pretty much what everyone's dealing with now. Certainly what everyone I know is dealing with, and how all this kind of hybrid stuff increases the need for compliance evidence that is somehow manageable in these hybrid models, and how you need cloud-related controls. And, of course, to me, that extends right into then not just cloud-related controls, but hybrid controls. So you've got local controls, cloud controls, but there's also controls that need to be put in place for that bridge between the cloud and your local stuff. So definitely worth checking that one out. I won't even bother saying if you're doing the cloud. For a second segment, Frank McCreary stuck around for a conversation on how intelligent automation can simplify cloud computing compliance. Say that real fast 3 times. So this will tie into the first segment, obviously, and it's definitely worth listening to Frank talking about this stuff. It was quite interesting to me, and I'm always most interested in the compliance stuff and seeing what's going on there. On Paul's Security Weekly, number 673 last night, Sven Morgenroth, often guest on the show, who's a security researcher at NetSparker, was on. Sven always does such a great job of showing us things that we probably haven't thought of. It was something I hadn't really thought about that much, but he was actually talking about JWT attacks. So these are these tokens. And just literally makes you cringe when you start thinking about all the different ways that he demonstrated on there that these tokens can be compromised, and make you kind of want to jump out of the show and go run and fix your JWT, your tokens this morning or last night, if that's the case. In the second segment, Dan DeCloss, the president and CEO at PlexTrack, also another frequent guest of the show, had another great presentation about run books. And I used to make run books a long time ago when we were auditing, because you walk in and you see a system and you need to just stop and say, oh, wow, that's an AS400. Oh, wow, that's a Windows Active Directory system or whatever. And you need to sit down and sort of write out a run book for how am I going to look at this and what are all the pieces. And, of course, for a lot of you, this is a standard component of a pen test, whether or a purple team or a blue team exercise. All these things involve run books. And, when I was doing that, I really wish I had this tool, this PlexTrack product that Dan was showing last night, on how you can build these run books and all the nice tags and things you can add to that. Put polarity on top of it, and it's like, wow. If you don't, polarity was last week, but if you had to see the polarity piece from last week, but you can check it's definitely worth watching the PlexTrack piece if you're doing any kind of run books at all. And Tyler was so into it. I was like, well, if Tyler thinks it's a really good idea, it's definitely probably a really good idea. or a really bad idea. But in this case, it was a really good idea. My favorite threat of the week is going to have to be password pwnage. I've probably talked about this before. I didn't even go back and look, but Joff had a story on there last night about some of this stuff. And Joff's story, which I attached in the wiki here, was primarily about Have I Been Pwned, which is a company, a security expert, putting out really useful tools so that you can actually see as you create passwords, are they already in this database of known passwords? And then now they've released APIs for Azure AD and all kinds of things like that. Really, really useful tool. But, I mean, basically this whole issue is just such a big problem. There's endless attempts at passwords, whether it's brute forcing, it's dictionary attacks, whatever it is, and something's going to give. Passwords, we hate them. You hate them. Your users hate them. Everybody hates them. I mean, everybody hates having to come up with them fill in the most recent popular term of change that is supposed to protect passwords here, 10 days, 5 days, 90 days, 40 minutes, whatever. And they just don't really work. Asking people to try to remember a 24-digit symbol case-shifted random collection that changes every 9 hours is just, it's just never going to work. And I know there's all kinds of techniques for this, whether they're mnemonics or they're passphrases and all this stuff. And yeah, those help. You're absolutely right. But then change it every 10 days, and because it's going to get grabbed somewhere, and then multiply that problem by 500 logins that you do every day. Any one of which can get compromised. And oh wait, won't single sign-on man save us all? Well, sure, single sign-on will save us, right? I mean, the first time I heard that in a meeting, somebody was like, single sign-on will solve all of our problems, and I'm like, I almost laughed out loud. I was like, really? Don't you think that actually makes it worse? And the guy was, I did ask that, and the guy was like, oh, no, absolutely not. Single sign-on will simplify the password management. And I was like, oh, wait, no, it means people, and then, it's like, look up in the sky. It's multi-factor man, a hero when you need a hero, right? Multi-factor will come and save the day until you have to pay for it. And half the systems don't support it, and your 35,000 users need 35,000 YubiKeys, and 10% of them lose their YubiKey every week, and you have to replace, reset, lather, rinse, repeat. The article I attached was basically showing some bridging solutions. And I'm not saying don't do multi-factor. I mean, absolutely. But it's just, it gets a lot of challenges, and then people don't use it, and they turn it off. They set it up, and then they do away with it. But have I been pwned? I have a lot of trouble saying that word. I do like that. I use that myself. They do have an API now. You can embed it in Azure AD. You can embed it in apps. So that maybe users start going, when that thing flashes red because your password is something lame, it maybe encourages people to pick a better password. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't really understand how people pick these things anyway. But like phishing, no matter how many times we tell people not to use their work password on the porn site and not to use the same porn site password on their bank account, most of them still do it. The most popular password is usually something like dragon, and then you send everybody out to all this training and all these warnings and, please do this and please do that, and they change it to capital D, RAGON, exclamation point. At least some of your users' passwords are already out there, right? And all of our passwords that we've used are probably already out there. And they're being used in credential stuffing and spraying attacks. And, we all know they are. So I'm not sure what the answer is for all this. I wish I could just sort of wrap this and go, oh, yeah, and here's what you should do. Single sign-on, man. We definitely need ways to absolutely identify everyone. The election was certainly a lot of controversy about, how do you ensure that the person is who they say they are. Nobody so far is going for that, drop of blood needle thingy that they had in Ethan Hawke movie, that thing. Yeah. Where you had to touch the thing and it takes a drop of your blood. And and the whole movie was about him spoofing that, eyeball scanners, that's why they sell grapefruit grapefruit spoons, right? And eyeball scanners with body temp sensing, and that's why they have grapefruit spoons with microwaves. I don't know. Anyway, there's no good solution at the moment to this major problem except to keep making them change the password, use passwords that are hard to brute force, and maybe teach them to use something like I've been pwned. I mean, that's all I can say about that. And the top news. Ryuk ransomware is now listed as one of the fastest growing strains of ransomware, and according to this article is behind about 1/3 of all ransomware attacks in 2020. 2020 saw a surge of 40% in the number of global, and I presume this means reported, ransomware attacks. But there's an interesting statistic about that too in a minute. That was 199.7 million ransomware attacks in 2020 so far. So, but here's the interesting statistic. Some countries, India, the United Kingdom, and Germany, all saw declines in ransomware. But the United States apparently saw a 139% year-over-year increase in ransomware. I mean, that really blew me away. I mean, I'm like, somebody needs to figure out what's going on in India, and we need to do that here, or why that is. The other interesting thing here that isn't at all surprising was this report had a whole bunch of statistics. Was IoT malware was the big increase in overall malware last year, in a year, or in 2020, in a year where malware in general declined, according to the report, but there was a 30% jump in the amount of malware for IoT. And IoT is scary, right? I mean, it scares me. So you probably need to start getting a handle on it, get some policies in place, get some ways to control this stuff. Or that little toy snake somebody sent you, or the Wi-Fi sex toys are going to take everyone out. I mean, that's coming soon. And we've been worrying about Skynet all these years, and in the end, nope, it was an AI-enabled Wi-Fi vibrator that's going to do us all in. Wouldn't be at all surprised. I couldn't resist this story about Pornhub being blocked in Thailand. I just couldn't. I wanted to. I was like, no, but look, censorship doesn't really work in the modern age. It didn't really work before, but it really doesn't work now. I mean, how many total porn sites are there out there, really? I mean, does anybody even know? Is somebody researching? It's like, somebody got to get on that. How many new porn sites pop up each day? I know Pornhub's a big porn site and it's famous and everyone knows what it is, but blocking it, I mean, so despite all the jokes, Thailand actually has a law against online pornography and online gambling. Imagine that. It's like that day when you find out, and the day you find out that like prostitution is not legal in Las Vegas. We won't get into that. But here's this same old approach. You know, somebody says, oh, no, pornography, think of the children. And they blacklisted 190 sites, despite the fact that Thailand was in the top 20 countries using Pornhub. So as ever, the people who want it will get it. I mean, they're either going to go to another site, Pornhub will just rebrand itself as Bunrop or something, and they'll, or the people will go out and buy a VPN. And so obviously people want to use the site, so guess what? They're going to find a way. And you can't prosecute Pornhub, so what are you going to do? Prosecute your citizens for looking at porn? I mean, really? You want to roll back the clock to that? I mean, it's like me trying to have a healthy diet or something. It's just probably not going to work. Another Chrome 0 day is being actively exploited, and Google patched this one. It's the second one they patched in 2 weeks. So you really need to update Chrome at this point. The current Chrome version that includes this patch is 86.0.4240.183. And the flaw is for this CVE 2020-16-009. And it was reported by Clement Lassane from TAG and Samuel Gross of Project Zero on the 29th of October. Not a lot of details about the flaw, but some information said it was an inappropriate implementation of the V8 JavaScript rendering engine, and it could allow remote code execution on your Chrome and on your system. So, you might want to fix that. In the ever-escalating digital Cold War, which I'm calling a moist war, I finally decided on what I was going to call it. So the Moist War. The U.S. Cyber Command released 8 new malware samples that they say were developed and deployed by Russian attackers. These are all from the Comrat malware and the Zebraki. I don't know how to say it, but Zebraki malware group. And these both came from Turla and APT28 respectively, which are both Russian groups. Both toolkits are under active update, according to this report, and they're being modified regularly and so forth. So, it's like a patch is out for your, U.S. Cyber Command Cyber National Mission Force uploaded the samples on their Virus Total account, and CISA published advisories about the malware. The sort of striking thing, this was the first time that malware strains were formally linked to Russia by the United States. So both these malware toolkits have been used to target ministries of foreign affairs and in one case a national parliament. Cybercom did have a funny graphic of a Russian bear, complete with the fuzzy hat with a hammer and sickle on it, dropping all of its Halloween candy, which was all labeled with various virus toolkit names, in a tweet that is in the article. So you can, if you want to see that, you can check it out. Another irresistible story that was on PSW last night was about the $1 billion Bitcoin wallet that it had. At the time, we didn't know who it belonged to, but it was suspected it belonged to Silk Road. The hash of the wallet was known, and people were tracking it, and it had 69,369 or 0.166280020 Bitcoins in it on the 3rd of November, which was really, really close to $1 billion at the valuation. But the balance suddenly changed to $1.38. Where did it go? Why $1.38? Well, the question got answered in the second story I posted yesterday. The story was updated to state that the U.S. Department of Justice was responsible for seizing the Bitcoin. They said the account was shown to have ties to Silk Road, which was shut down long ago, and it represents the largest Bitcoin seizure ever by the Department of Justice. So it's not over. So now the Department of Justice will have to prove in court that the seizing of the account was actually justified. I don't know what happens to the money either, even in the short run. I mean, the interest on $1 billion, even for a couple of months, is significant. I'll take it. And then after that, if they keep it, I don't know what happens. I'll hopefully we'll all each get a check or something. But maybe they'll use it to pay down the national debt. Nah, they'll never do that. Deloitte had put up a website called Test Your Hacker IQ to provide quizzes about hacking tactics, and the site, which was at DeloitteHackerIQ.com, ended up allowing its YAML config to be publicly accessible. And wait for it, the YAML file actually had in clear text the username and password for the MySQL database right there. Was it part of the test? But it certainly meant you could access the MySQL database. So, oops. I mean, that's a really old hack. So maybe it was part of the test. Apparently, the quiz did not cover password exposure in their questions of tactics. Yeah, okay. Well, I guess they kind of did. I mentioned this last week, but I will re-mention CVE 2020-14-882. Another article this week about this particular vulnerability, which is an Oracle WebLogic server flaw, which allows for remote code executions. Johannes Ulrich of the SANS Technology Institute said that scans are slowing down for this flaw, but attackers are still actively seeking it out. And he reported that it is low in complexity to execute. It can be done with limited privileges, and it does not require any user interaction to execute. So you might want to get on this if you haven't already. Zoom snooping is a new thing that basically showed you might be able to guess a Zoom or a password, not just a Zoom password, but a password by watching someone on the Zoom meeting type it. This came from the University of Texas research, and they published a technical brief on a framework which uses shoulder movements to theoretically determine what you're typing based on your movements in the Zoom call. Wow. They basically, people in the Zoom calls are actually doing all kinds of stuff, right? So I think I'll log into Pornhub for a while, whatever. They claimed a 75% accuracy on this, though, in their test. So the paper focused on slight pixel shifts on high-def video around your upper arms and shoulders to determine north, south, east, west movements, and they mapped that to the QWERTY keyboard. And wow. So definitely worth the read, and maybe if you can test it out, it might be fun. So a very interesting study there. And finally, while we avoid politics at Security Weekly like the plague, who was the real winner of the 2020 election? Well, it was drugs. Yeah, drugs, actually. No kidding. Weed, big winner. New Jersey, Arizona, South Dakota, and Montana all legalized good old cannabis for recreational use. Wow. And that makes a lot of people happy, and other people think it's the end of the world. It depends on, probably how old you are. But other cities and such decriminalize this drug as well. And decriminalization usually means they move it from something they charge you with a felony or a misdemeanor to something they charge you with a civil offense, which is like a parking fine. I think the days for illegal weed are probably numbered in the United States. I really do. I hope so. I mean, there's too many people have been charged with this stuff. But that's not all. Wait for it. Washington, D.C. decriminalized psilocybin mushrooms. Yes, magic mushrooms may make politics make a lot more sense. Who knows? And let's not stop there. Oregon legalized psilocybin mushroom therapy and decriminalized heroin, cocaine, and meth. And we kind of make light of it, and it sounds like sort of a funny story. But I guess the point in Oregon was to stop treating drug addicts as criminals and try to actually help them. So instead of just taking people that were addicted to things and say, well, you're a thug and we're going to toss you in jail, maybe they should actually try to find out why they're addicted and help them out. And they don't do that when they go to prison. I think the mushrooms, which were used for a lot of disorders, and the weed, which is also widely used for medical disorders, makes a lot of sense. And treating addicts as hardened criminals has probably just got the effect of actually turning them into hardened criminals. So maybe it all makes kind of sense in a crazy year. I don't know. And that's a news wrap-up for the week of 1 November 2020 in the time of plague. See you next week, and please stop spreading ridiculous conspiracies and unsupported rumors. I'm tired of seeing them. And you know who I'm talking to.